I've been away for the weekend. It's now Monday morning, quite early on, before I've got to hit the road and get to work today. And I wanted to do a video about the Stiverne Wilder fight. I was away at my girlfriend's this weekend, and despite her upset, I managed to watch the fight. And yeah, congratulations to Deontay Wilder. I predicted incorrectly that Bermaine Stiverne will win the fight, and many congratulations and credit go to Deontay Wilder following on from it. Largely I was impressed by his performance. Let me start by saying I'm pleased there was no controversy behind the ending. What I didn't want was an ending like Wilder Malik Scott, where Wilder became the heavyweight champion of the world, yet everyone doubted whether it was some sort of conspiracy or some sort of fix. I'm pleased there was no ending like that. Let me also say I'm pleased that this went 12 rounds. Really am pleased, because if Deontay Wilder just walked over to Bermaine Stiverne, landed a long right, it would be hard to say that he was anything more than a big power puncher. But the fact that this fight went for 12 rounds, and the fact that it was relatively one-sided, is more credit to Deontay Wilder. It shows more strings to his bow than just a power puncher. It shows that he can box a little bit, and yeah, I was pleased with that. Pleased that the fight went long, and pleased that there was no controversy. Many congratulations to Deontay Wilder. As I stated pre-fight, Bermaine Stiverne was a guy I genuinely considered to be towards the top of the heavyweight division. Not the very top, not number 2, not number 3, but right towards the top. And I think with this win, it'd be very hard to say that Deontay Wilder isn't a top 5 heavyweight in the current market. So fair play to him. As I say, I got the prediction wildly wrong. I had a huge amount of comments on my video from, not a huge amount, but a huge amount for me, from Deontay Wilder fans. And I think, to be fair, whilst I have to take blame for getting this one wrong, most people did get this wrong. Because all the Deontay Wilder fans I were listening to were saying that he was going to walk over and cross Bermaine Stiverne. But it wasn't like that at all. I didn't hear too many people predicting a Wilder points win. So, fair play to anyone who did. It was obviously quite a hard fight to call in hindsight. Let me start with the good bits. I'll tell you what impressed me about Deontay Wilder. His jab. It wasn't as robotic. It had a bit of sting to it. It was an effective weapon. I really liked his jab. I thought Deontay Wilder controlled the distance very well. He kept Bermaine Stiverne for the majority of the fight at perfect range for him, so he could pepper Bermaine Stiverne with the 1-2 and, you know, be out of the shorter man's range himself. So I thought the jab was good. I thought he judged the distance well. Stamina. The fight went 12. Wilder had never gone beyond 4. I was impressed. You know, he looked a fitter man. He looked like he had the better stamina. He certainly looked like he can go the 12-round distance. That was a doubt for me, so I was pleased to see improved stamina. Finally, chin. A lot of people, certainly including myself, questioned whether the guy had a jaw made of glass. The fact of the matter is, Bermaine Stiverne is a very big puncher. Now, it's not like Bermaine Stiverne was landing at will on Deontay Wilder, but Bermaine Stiverne did, you know, catch him several times throughout the course of the fight. And, you know, Wilder's chin stood up. He didn't look like he was about to get KO'd at any point, really, in my opinion. It may be that when he fights the likes of Vladimir Klitschko, chin is something we have to discuss again, but we should at least acknowledge that Wilder doesn't have a chin made of complete glass, you know, and I take that back. Fair play to him. Stiverne, I was very disappointed in his performance. For a start, his stamina was deeply in question. He didn't look in the best fighting shape to me. Where was the Stiverne jab? That's been an effective weapon in the past. It wasn't present there. He was very poor at cutting off the ring. He just sort of walked in front of Wilder the whole fight. Couldn't sort of close him down effectively. Stiverne's distance, I thought, was very poor. He sort of stood at 3/4 range, so he was in range of Wilder's jab. He was almost like a sitting target for Wilder's long 2. But he couldn't get inside, really, at points. I didn't get it. His distancing was poor, and I think that relates to his foot speed, his athleticism, which just wasn't really there, you know. It wasn't enough to sort of rush Wilder, to hurry Wilder, to change the distance. So disappointed with Stiverne on a number of different areas. He did show great heart and an iron chin to get through the fight and to keep coming, so respect to him for that. And I still think Stiverne I'd probably consider a top 10 heavyweight after that. I think his wins over Chris Arreola were impressive, and in time we'll see just how good Deontay Wilder is, and you know, maybe going 12 rounds with him is a good thing. So as I say, I was underwhelmed by Stiverne. Wilder impressed me. Wilder, his jab, his stamina, his chin, his distancing, he did better in all of those areas than I expected him to. There are still one or two areas of doubt for me with Deontay Wilder. Now I'm going to cover those briefly. For a start, I really don't like his stance. Anyone who watched the fight, his legs and his feet were so far apart, you know, they were so far apart, it's very hard to make adjustments. Now, as I've already mentioned, Bermaine Stiverne doesn't have huge athleticism, doesn't have huge foot speed, doesn't have the most dynamic footwork. But Deontay Wilder's legs were literally at this angle for large portions of the fight, and they were so far apart from each other. If he was rushed at by an opponent, say someone like David Haye, a kind of ambush fighter who will charge in, it's so hard to make an adjustment, to reposition yourself, to react, to move, when your legs are like that. You have to almost shuffle backwards. I'd prefer to see him with a closer stance. Now that wasn't necessarily a negative against Bermaine Stiverne, because he dealt with the distance well. But I have a concern that stance may cause a problem for him against a more dynamic heavyweight. Wilder's defence, he did again better than expected, but he was caught several times by Bermaine Stiverne. You know, Bermaine Stiverne was able to catch him, counterpunch him at times with a hook. You know, I saw him land a straight punch several times. Wilder took less punishment than I expected, but there's a few times Stiverne was able to catch him, and I thought if that was a David Haye, you know, who could then follow it up, who could throw 3 or 4 more punches off it, I thought he could be in trouble. It wasn't a clinical defensive performance from Wilder. I thought there were gaps in his guard, certainly gaps in his stance defensively, gaps in his defensive movement, and that would be a concern for me should he fight the likes of Vladimir Klitschko. Finally, and this is my biggest gripe with Wilder, Wilder rocks Stiverne in both rounds 2 and round 7, and he charges in like an absolute imbecile. He's throwing the wildest, craziest hooks I've ever seen. To be honest, he looks like a junk outside a pub at 3 in the morning when he's throwing those punches. They're literally almost like straight arm punches. They're almost like slaps, the most windmill style punches you've ever seen in your life. And what I don't get is he's hurting Stiverne by throwing, you know, classic 1-2 combinations, jab crosses. He's being effective by using boxing technique. He's in there with a very durable, very hard punching technician, counter puncher if you like. Why, when he gets Stiverne hurt, does he abandon the 1-2? Why does he abandon technique? And why does he charge in and throw ridiculous, embarrassing windmill punches like that? You know, this will find him out eventually. What I find hard to believe is that this has been the main criticism of Deontay Wilder ever since that Audley Harrison fight, ever since that David Haye sparring session. People must have told him this. He must have seen comment on this. People, you know, his trainer must have had a word with him after that Audley Harrison ending and say, you can't rush in like that, you're leaving yourself open. And yet we see him again abandon technique completely and start windmilling. Deontay Wilder fans, if you're watching this video, I'd be interested to hear if you could comment below. You know, credit your man, full respect for getting the fight right. But do you agree with me that this is a problem? You know, do you agree that against a counter-puncher with big punching power in Bermaine Stiverne, you should not be rushing in like that, windmilling, leaving yourself open? It's a recipe for absolute disaster. It's my absolute biggest gripe from him. And not only is it a huge flaw technically, but it also suggests that this is a guy who's not learning from his mistakes, because I find it almost impossible to believe that nobody highlighted this to him as a mistake after the Audley Harrison fight. So Wilder impressed me on the whole, but for me there were still concerns about him defensively, still concerns about him charging in like an amateur, and still concerns about his stance, which to me affected his movement and his sort of agility going backwards. Let me say, a lot of people I've seen on Twitter have compared this fight to the Fury-Chisora fight. Now there's a lot of similarities there. Fury and Wilder both win. They're both tall men up against much shorter opponents. They both dominate the fight behind the jab. They're both one-sided fights against smaller opponents who try and get inside and largely fail. But I would say at this point that the Tyson Fury performance against Derek Chisora is a far superior performance than Deontay Wilder against Bermaine Stiverne. Fury stops Chisora, but that's not really what I'm getting at here. My point is, Fury, for me, was much more composed. He was much calmer. Fury was just as dominant, if not more dominant, on Chisora. But what you didn't see from Fury were the defensive frailties. At no point in that fight was Fury getting caught in the chin, was Fury eating leather like Deontay Wilder was. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that Deontay Wilder was beaten up here, because he wasn't, he was dominant. But let's be honest, he ate quite a few punches to Bermaine Stiverne. And we just didn't see that from Tyson Fury. We saw a much stronger defensive performance from Fury in that fight than Wilder in the Stiverne fight, in my opinion. Obviously, Fury got the stoppage. Fury was caught less. And I don't think we saw the same urgency from Fury. There are plenty of times in that fight, where he was very, very dominant over Chisora, but we saw him keep his technique. We saw him continue doing what was working for him. Very, very composed. He didn't rush in, he didn't leave himself open, he didn't abandon his defence. For me, calmness, composure, defence, technique, Fury has the edge over Wilder at this point. I just thought that Wilder, there were issues with his movement, issues with his defence, issues with his, as I say, this sort of charging in that you just don't see from Tyson Fury. I also think that Wilder is a fighter who's very, very reliant on range. And that's fine, because he will typically be the bigger man in a fight. But let's be honest, the reason he was so successful in this fight was because he was able to dominate from distance using a jab, using a 1-2, against an opponent who couldn't cut down the range. But that won't necessarily be the case against Tyson Fury, because Fury's quite a bit bigger than Wilder. Fury's got bigger reach than Wilder. Wilder won't be able to just stand at a distance and use reins, because Fury is, can step out of the way and jab him from distance. Fury can take away Wilder's reins, because quite simply Fury's the bigger man. So I think Wilder struggles against Fury. Clearly Wilder's a very big puncher, clearly he's got the potential, but I think Fury, being the bigger man, takes away Wilder's main asset, which is the long 1-2. I also think that Wilder lacks the tactical versatility that Fury has. I mean, let's be honest, Wilder was very predictable. It was the same thing he was doing over and over again. To my eye, Tyson Fury has more of a defensive game. He's also got more of an inside game. He's better in a clinch. He's better throwing hooks, better throwing uppercuts. I think Wilder is a fighter who likes to stand at range and just throw that 1-2. I haven't seen him with the same inside success Tyson Fury showed. I haven't seen him with the same defensive mode or movement that Tyson Fury showed. So I worry that Deontay Wilder lacks versatility, that he's only got one way of winning a fight, which is the sort of jab cross from distance. He's got that tasty left hook, front hand left hook, which is also good, but I think if Tyson Fury can take that away from him by being the bigger man, Deontay Wilder loses his only asset. He can't fight on the inside, he can't rough Fury up like we saw Fury do in the Chisora 1 fight, or perhaps in the Steve Cunningham fight. He doesn't have those strings to his bow, in my opinion. Two other heavyweights that I think could give Deontay Wilder problems. Firstly, David Haye. I think if David Haye was able to hit Deontay Wilder in the same way that Bermaine Stiverne was, he wouldn't let Wilder off the hook. He wouldn't have the stamina issues. I mean, we saw how David Haye was able to close on Chisora. You know, once he got him hit, once he hurt him, it was relentless. He was on him. You know, I think that would be effective. And I also think that with Wilder's stance that I've talked about, David Haye could rush him, you know, panic him, ambush him. And I don't think Deontay Wilder with that stance would be able to sort of make adjustments quick enough. So I think David Haye, I think Tyson Fury. Let me also say, a fighter who I'm not a big fan of is Bryant Jennings. I think Bryant Jennings is going to have a very hard night against Vladimir Klitschko if they fight. But one thing Jennings does have is sort of advanced athleticism and movement. And I think stylistically he's certainly got a chance against Wilder. He wouldn't stand in front of Wilder like Bermaine Stiverne did. He wouldn't just stand there to get hit by a jab. You know, the guy's a moving target. He's mobile. He'd test Wilder in different ways. And I think stylistically, at least, that's an interesting fight. I'm not saying I'd pick Jennings necessarily, because I believe there are lots of flaws to Jennings' game. But certainly, I think he'd have a good chance against Wilder. You know, obviously you've got to throw Klitschko into the mix there as well. So I think Klitschko, Fury and Haye, at this point I'd be picking them over Wilder. Bryant Jennings, I think he'd have a very, very good shot as well. I think Wilder's improved a lot. He showed a lot more to me than I expected. Jab, stamina, chin, distancing. But for me, stance, defence and this constant charging in nonsense, I think that is still, for me, keeping him outside the very, very top of the heavyweight division. You know, he's probably ranked 4, 5, 6, in my opinion, that sort of level. You know, I think that the top guys, I don't see the same frailties in them defensively. I don't see the amateurishness of their movement. I don't see the sort of crazy windmilling and charging in that he displays. I think he's improving, he's performing at a very high level, but he's not the most refined heavyweight out there at present. Credit to Wilder, I got this one wrong. He seems like a nice guy, he's very marketable, he's got a bright future ahead of him. But if he fights Vladimir Klitschko, if he fights Tyson Fury like he's talking about, there are still flaws in his game that can be exposed. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.